The football gangs that ruled Britain's streets. Britain gave the world football, but it also birthed its dark twin, football hooliganism. For decades, Saturday in British cities was not a day of rest, but a time of total mobilization. These were not just random skirmishes of drunken fans. They were organized, disciplined, and incredibly violent groups known as firms. They hijacked trains, occupied entire districts, and turned city centers into war zones. For these men, football was merely a pretext, a backdrop for the real game, the battle for territory, reputation, and dominance. We are diving into the history of the most dangerous gangs that made all of Europe shudder at the mention of the English disease. To understand the roots of this rage, one must look at the depressed working-class neighborhoods of 1970s Britain. Economic decline, the closure of steel mills, and a sense of total social hopelessness created a vacuum. As traditional institutions crumbled, tribal loyalty to the local club became the only meaning of life. Football became the only way to make a mark. The first truly organized and terrifying force was the intercity firm, ICF, representing London's West Ham United. They took their name from the intercity express trains they used to travel to away matches. This was an innovation in the world of violence. Unlike the skinheads of the 60s, the ICF abandoned heavy boots and braced denim. They began wearing expensive designer clothing to blend in with the crowds of ordinary business commuters, outsmarting the police who expected to see tattooed, bald-headed thugs. The ICF introduced the calling card system. After an opposing firm was defeated in a brutal street battle, a card was left on the bodies of the fallen rivals with the inscription, "Congratulations, you've just met the ICF." This was psychological warfare at its peak. Leaders like Cass Pennant and Bill Gardner created a structure resembling a military organization, complete with its own intelligence, a vanguard of young fighters, the under-5s, and a core strike force. Their pub raid tactics were honed to perfection. One scout enters to check the scene, gives a signal, and seconds later, the windows are blown out as 50 men with knuckle dusters storm inside. At the same time, an equally formidable force was rising in northern England. In Manchester, the streets belonged to the Red Army, Manchester United, and the young Governors, Manchester City. The Red Army was so massive in the 1970s that the police often lacked the physical capacity to contain their onslaught. Their specialty was taking the end, invading the heart of the opposition's terrace in the middle of a match, sowing panic, and physically ejecting the home fans from their own stand. Battles between Manchester United and Liverpool fans turned the rail lines between the cities into an obstacle course. Liverpool's firm, the Urchins, made a decisive contribution to the aesthetic we now call casuals. In the late 70s, following their team across Europe for European Cup matches, they began systematically looting high-end sports boutiques in France, Italy, and Germany. They brought back exclusive Adidas sneakers, Lacoste polo shirts, and Sergio Tacchini jackets that were impossible to buy legally in Britain. This became the new uniform. Now, the enemy wasn't recognized by the colors of their scarf. Colors were banned to avoid police attention, but by the brand of an expensive windbreaker or the sole of a designer trainer. It is impossible to talk about power on the streets without mentioning the Millwall Bushwackers. If other firms sought style, the men from South London representing Millwall sought pure, concentrated terror. Their stadium, the Den, was officially recognized as the most dangerous place in the country. Their motto, "No one likes us, we don't care," became the anthem of a generation of outcasts. The Bushwackers were masters of the ambush. Their tactics involved using the topography of the docks and the narrow alleys of South London. They would lure an away firm into a dead end, where men would appear from around corners armed with chains and Millwall bricks, tightly rolled and folded newspapers that, in skilled hands, became clubs capable of crushing bone. In 1985, during a match against Luton, the Bushwackers caused a riot broadcast live on television. Images of fans ripping out seats and hurling them at police before storming the pitch forced Margaret Thatcher to create a war cabinet on hooliganism. London was carved into spheres of influence like a mafia movie. In the north, the Yid Army, Tottenham, and the Herd, Arsenal, ruled. Arsenal's firm was known for its exceptional mobility. They could appear at a tube station where no one expected them and demolish a numerically superior enemy within 10 minutes. In West London, the Chelsea firm known as the Shed Boys operated, and later the infamous Headhunters. The Headhunters were perhaps the most politicized gang in Britain, with close ties to far-right organizations, adding a dangerous ideological element to the cocktail of street violence. Their intelligence was flawless. They knew which hotels opposition fans stayed in and would arrange night visits, turning a peaceful rest into a bloody mess. In Birmingham, the war for the streets was particularly sharp between the Zulus, Birmingham City, and Aston Villa Hardcore. The Zulus were a unique social phenomenon. They were the first truly multi-ethnic firm in Britain. In a city plagued by racial tension, football paradoxically united black and white youth against a common enemy, outsider firms from London. Their clashes with police often escalated into urban uprisings. In 1985, at their St Andrew's Stadium, one of the most horrific brawls occurred, leading to the collapse of a wall and the death of a teenager. How did these gangs rule the streets for so long? The answer lies in their strict internal code. This was an alternative social hierarchy. For a young lad from the outskirts whose parents were unemployed, the firm was the only place he received status and protection. There was rigid discipline. Leaders, top boys, held unquestioned authority. The use of hard drugs was often banned, as a fighter had to be ready for a scuffle at all times. Cowardice was punished by instant expulsion and shame across the neighborhood. It was a form of urban knighthood, pushed to the point of absurdity and bloody violence. The tactical superiority of the firms over the police was staggering. In the 80s, hooligans began using handheld radios to coordinate attacks. They studied train timetables and police shift patterns. When the police began mass arrests of people in club colors, the firms fully embraced the casual style, buying brands like Stone Island, Burberry, and Aqua Scutum. This style became a symbol of belonging to the elite of street fighters. The famous Stone Island patch on the left arm became, for British society at the time, the equivalent of a pirate flag. The decline of the classic football gangs was caused by both police pressure and a series of national tragedies. Heysel, 1985, and Hillsborough, 1989, changed everything. After the Heysel disaster, where 39 people died following an attack by Liverpool fans, English clubs were banned from European competition for 5 years. The state began to act mercilessly. Laws were passed allowing for 10-year prison sentences based on video evidence. The police launched Operation Own Goal, infiltrating undercover agents into the core of the firms. These agents lived as hooligans for years to take down the entire leadership. The rise of rave culture in the late 80s also dealt a blow to hooliganism. With the arrival of ecstasy and dance music, aggression turned to euphoria. At the legendary Hacienda Club in Manchester, mortal enemies from the Red Army and the Young Governors could be seen hugging under the beats of house music. We were all in the same hole, soaked in sweat, and we didn't care about football, veterans of the movement recalled. Today, British football is a glossy television product, and stadiums have become safe family zones. But the old firms haven't disappeared. They have evolved. Today's groups are much more secretive and professional. They no longer seek media attention or smash stadiums covered in cameras. Modern hooligans are often successful middle-aged men who meet for forest fights on the outskirts of cities, far from the eyes of the law. It has become a sort of private fight club. The period when football gangs literally dictated terms to entire cities remains in history as a unique and terrifying time. It was a working-class uprising expressed in its ugliest and most violent form. The firms ruled the streets because they embodied the collective rage and pride of a people who felt abandoned by their country. They left behind thousands of scars and legends, reminding us that football in Britain is never just a game. It is a war for the right to be heard, even if your only argument is a fist. This was our large-scale study of British football gangs. We've gone from casual style to pure street terror, looking into the darkest corners of football history. Do you think football hooliganism is a relic of the past? Or is it a part of human nature that will always find a way out? Write your opinion in the comments. If you are interested in the dark side of British history, street wars, and the evolution of subcultures, be sure to subscribe to the channel.